Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second webinar for the second round of the UKRI Cross Research Council Responsive Mode Pilot Scheme. My name is Alex Amy, and I am the strategic lead for the programme. It is really exciting to be talking to you today about the second round of the scheme, and we are now able to provide you with more details of the application and assessment process and share with you real examples of exceptional interdisciplinary research proposals, which we didn't have when we launched round one. In today's webinar, I will cover the details of the scheme, including what we're looking for, and also provide more information on the definition of interdisciplinary research that we are using for this scheme, illustrating this using some case studies of funded applications from round one. I will then hand over to Hilary, who will provide information on who can apply for the scheme and what you can apply for, and then Jenny will run through the application and assessment process for the scheme, and we will end the webinar with the important dates and the further resources that are available to you. After the presentations, there will be time to go through any questions you have. If you do have questions, please post these in the Q&A function. However, there are over 600 people registered for today's webinar, so that is potentially a lot of questions. So in order for you to help us manage that, please can I ask that you wait for the relevant part of the presentation before posting your question, as you may find that it is covered in the information we provide. There are members of the team behind the scenes who will be working on answering as many of your questions that they can in the Q&A function as we do the presentations. But we should have about 30 minutes at the end of the webinar to address any questions that they haven't been able to answer. You should have all received a copy of the slides this morning, which also contain the links that we will be mentioning and pasting in the chat throughout the presentations. We'll be sending out a copy of the Q&A after the webinar, including any questions that we don't have time to get round to answering today. A recording of the webinar will also be made available online, but this does take a couple of weeks to process to ensure the captions are correct. Before I start, I would like to introduce you to the team behind the CRCRM scheme. Presenting with me today are Hilary McNeil and Jenny Morris, our two senior programme managers. The scheme is supported by Steve Meader, who is the director of the Future Leaders Fellowship Programme and is on the scheme project board, and he will be chairing the Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. And also joining the Q&A panel later in the webinar is Samantha Aspinall, Head of Interdisciplinary Research Development at the Horizons Institute at the University of Leeds, and she's on secondment to UKRI specifically to help develop and train the Interdisciplinary Assessment College, which will be reviewing applications to this call. Supporting us is a fantastic team who are working behind the scenes today to make the webinar run smoothly and are really key in processing all the applications and running the assessment process. So just some background to the scheme. UKRI already funds a huge amount of excellent interdisciplinary research through our individual council responsive mode schemes, where they are anchored by a leading discipline, as well as through UKRI's challenge-led and strategic calls. This scheme will supplement and complement the outstanding interdisciplinary research supported through these existing programmes, and existing Research Council responsive mode schemes will continue to support interdisciplinary research applications both within and cross-council boundaries through the cross-council remit agreement. Although current council responsive schemes routinely do fund interdisciplinary research, the requirement for applicants to identify a home research council to which they can submit their proposal currently disincentivises research that significantly spans the remits of different research councils. The CRCRM scheme will address a gap in UKRI's current funding provision that was identified in Paul Nurse's review in 2016 and more recently in David Grant's review of UKRI. The aim of the scheme is to support research that either didn't have a home within UKRI's existing structures or wasn't perceived to have a home by the community. We want people to be able to write exciting research applications that reflect their vision for what they want that research to do without having to tweak and bend it so that it fits a particular call or council. Now, we know how important existing council responsive mode schemes have been in supporting research and innovation with transformative outcomes for knowledge, the economy and society. And this scheme will do the same for research at the interface between different disciplines by directly incentivising interdisciplinary, curiosity-driven research that spans council remits. So in the last spending review, UKRI was allocated £65 million aimed at supporting new interdisciplinary ideas emerging from the research community. And we are doing this through the Cross Research Council Responsive Mode pilot scheme. The scheme will support projects that transcend, combine, or significantly span disciplines involving different knowledge and methodological spheres, and it will support research that can only be addressed through interdisciplinary collaboration. Applications to this scheme must also have disciplines that come from at least 2 research councils. Applications that fall within a single council remit are ineligible, as there are already funding opportunities available to support them, and I will speak on this in a bit more detail later. Projects will be supported for up to 2 years with a full economic cost of between 200,000 and 1.2 million, with UKRI funding 80% of the full economic cost. So we anticipate making around 36 awards in each round. The pilot scheme is running over 2 rounds of funding, and we are now in the 2nd round. The pilot is allowing us to assess demand and to test and refine our processes as we go. And this is very much a learning process, and we are developing and delivering the scheme in real time. And we've been working closely with our UKRI colleagues in the research community to rapidly learn from the 1st round, and we are now applying this learning to the 2nd round. We've had some really positive feedback from applicants saying that the scheme has actually allowed them more freedom to develop their application as they wanted to write it, rather than align it with a particular council, that they were able to write an application in a way that it was needed to do the work, rather than trying to have to force it to align with a research council. And they were able to develop ideas beyond what is funded by a single research council. Looking at how we assess interdisciplinary research applications, we know peer review is a large burden on the research community. And when we launched this scheme, we didn't know what the demand would be in terms of application numbers. But more importantly for this scheme, we know that some review processes can stifle interdisciplinary approaches, and that referees who are only confident about one discipline will consider the whole proposal is flawed if that part is not cutting edge. For interdisciplinary research, the novelty is in bringing together the disciplines using a combined approach or new methodologies to approach a research question or challenge. And sometimes referees will make judgments on the entire proposal without understanding the synergy and importance of the interdisciplinary aspects. In monodisciplinary panels such as the individual council responsive mode panels, interdisciplinary research is often deemed to be out of scope because part of the application doesn't fit. And applications may be presented in unfamiliar style for different disciplines, i.e. work packages versus narrative descriptions. And sample sizes may also be very different for other disciplines. So approaches could be deemed flawed when looked at through the lens of a single discipline. Referees who traditionally work in single or with similar disciplines might not understand the challenges of interdisciplinary working. When assessing interdisciplinary research, there's a need to expand what we mean by quality and a need to think about the team dynamics for interdisciplinary research, allowing extra time and resources to make those team dynamics work better. Therefore, assessment of interdisciplinary research needs to leave the standard conventions behind. So for the CRCRM scheme, we needed to think about different approaches without creating additional hurdles in the assessment process. Applications to this scheme will be assessed by members of an interdisciplinary assessment college with no external peer review. And we had an open call for college members in May 2023 that opened alongside the announcement of the round 1 outline stage. It was open to everyone with experience of interdisciplinary research, and we were looking for people from all sector backgrounds, including academics, industry and public sector, and also different stages of their careers and from across a range of roles needed for successful interdisciplinary research, such as research professionals and technical roles. Applicants needed to understand and have experience of interdisciplinary research, either through directly undertaking interdisciplinary research or supporting interdisciplinary researchers. We had an extremely positive response from the community with over 1,300 applications, and we appointed around 300 members, including approximately 70 members to a chair pool. All appointed college members have a high level of experience in working on or supporting interdisciplinary research, and the college membership reflects the breadth of disciplines and subjects across UKRI, including those working in new and emerging areas to help respond to the potential demand and breadth of applications. We've been working with the college, providing training specifically to support them in their approaches to assessing these interdisciplinary proposals. and we've been fortunate to have Professor Catherine Lyle, an independent consultant on interdisciplinary research, an Emerita Professor of Science and Public Policy at the University of Edinburgh, working with UKRI in providing this specific training. So having a specific college experienced in working on or supporting interdisciplinary research and specifically trained to review these applications should mitigate against the problems of assessing interdisciplinary research. We are currently analysing the expertise within the college against the data we have on round one, and we will be looking whether there is a need to fill any gaps in expertise. Now we have a better idea on the types and spread of applications we will receive. Just to show you an overview of where we are in the pilot scheme timeline, the application process comprises of 2 stages, an outline stage and an invited submission of a full stage application. Round 1 applications were awarded in June, and we have just made the formal announcements this week. We'll be holding an event in November for all the round 1 funded projects. The pre-announcement for round 2 was published in June and officially opened on last week, and outlines will need to be submitted on the 19th of November. The outline stage assessment will run until April, and applicants will be invited to submit full stage applications from April for submission in July. The full stage assessment process will then run until November, with awards being announced in January 2026. As I said earlier, we are learning from this pilot scheme, and we are running an evaluation alongside the pilot. We've been sending out surveys to applicants and the members of the Interdisciplinary Assessment College who've been involved in round 1. And we've had some excellent response rates from the community and some really useful feedback, in particular from our cohort of chairs who've been really engaged with the scheme and joining us at workshops to look at changes to how we can improve the process for round 2. We've now appointed an external supplier who will be doing a more in-depth analysis of round 1, and we'll be following up with some in-depth interviews with a broad range of people that have been involved in the scheme so far. In addition, we are working with the Innovation Research Caucus, who are running some mini projects to help us understand where we could enhance our processes to better assess interdisciplinary research projects. So just finally, in the last part of the introduction section, I will go through the summary of the outcomes of the first round. Jenny is going to go into the assessment process in more detail later, but just for this point, I need to say that after applications have been assessed and scored, the panels use a process to help tension the assessments across multiple panels by banding applications A to D, where applications banded A are a priority for inviting through to full stage or a priority for funding. At the full stage, there is an additional band, A star, where panels can assign up to 10% of their applications, which are considered to be of exceptional or outstanding quality and can clearly be distinguished from other applications, and the panel consider them a top priority for funding. The full range of banding definitions are provided in our published guidance document. So for round 1, we had 979 outline applications submitted, and we considered 77 of those to be out of scope, i.e. not covering at least 2 Research Council remit areas. We took 899 outline applications through to assessment, and from that process, we then invited 175 applications that were banded A through to the full stage. Our project board had set a limit on the number of full stage applications to ensure that we had a minimum 20% success rate at the full stage. We had 170 full stage applications submitted, and these were assessed by the Interdisciplinary Assessment College. And we then awarded 36 applications with a total funding of 32.4 million, where we awarded all band A star applications and randomised the applications in band A across all panels and awarded the remaining budget down this list. So as you can see, it's a highly competitive process, and we're going to be working to that same minimum success rate of 20% at full stage for round 2. So I'm now going to talk about the key element for this scheme, and that is interdisciplinarity. For this scheme, we are using the definition of interdisciplinarity from the REF 2021 Interdisciplinary Advisory Panel. And that is, interdisciplinary research is understood to achieve outcomes that could not be achieved within the framework of a single discipline. It features significant interaction between 2 or more disciplines and moves beyond established disciplinary foundations in applying or integrating research approaches from other disciplines. So what does exceptional interdisciplinary research look like? The call text for the UKRI schemes asks applications to demonstrate that they have co-created or co-designed the research project and not just sought an additional discipline and bolted it on to deliver something for the other discipline. Often some disciplines can be considered as service providers on a project, and in these cases they tend to be brought in late to a project and not included from the start, and also not involved in the project framing or the research design, and also not having the freedom to set what the role is for their discipline, and they are often prescribed quite rigid roles within a project. In cases like these, disciplines feel like the junior partner of the project, and therefore better fits the definition of multidisciplinary research. So assessors will be looking for evidence that all disciplines have been involved from the start and have had input to the research design. In an interdisciplinary research project, there will be reciprocal benefits for all the disciplines involved. Either disciplines will be changed or transformed in some way by working together. So you need to consider if you can demonstrate that the contributing disciplines have gained something significant from the collaboration. For example, that the discipline's knowledge base has been changed or transformed by working with other disciplines. It does not mean that they need to have changed or gained equally, but being changed as an outcome of the project shows that the discipline is not just being used as a tool for a different area of research. Apologies. With interdisciplinary research, there is emphasis on integration. Assessors will be looking for things beyond scientific excellence in the applications and drilling down into what is being integrated. Why is an integrative approach necessary? Have applicants made a specific case for this? Because not all research needs to be interdisciplinary. How will the integration be done? Have you thought about this in terms of integrating both the intellectual aspects of the research, but also the organisational aspects of the team? i.e., how is the team going to work together to overcome the challenges of interdisciplinary research? And what level of preparedness do you need to do to undertake this type of research? Demonstrating this integration of the disciplines in your application is really key for this scheme. And through co-creation of your project, you will have integration from the outset. Christian Pohl talks about how a good interdisciplinary proposal will be something that explicitly states what the applicants mean by integration. What will integration look like for their particular case? And they will make a good case for why this is the adequate kind of integration given the project's purpose. Whereas poor proposals will see integration as something that happens by itself, as a natural byproduct of bringing clever people together to work on the same topic. Often the terms interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary research can be interchanged. So I want to provide some clarity on the differences and what would be considered in and out of scope for this scheme. I've already covered what we mean by interdisciplinary research in terms of co-creation, reciprocal benefits, and integration of disciplines. The key difference between multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary research is the level of integration across the disciplines. Multidisciplinary research is where researchers work independently within their disciplines, and there is little or no integration of the disciplines and could result in distinct outputs. Work packages are discrete and discipline-specific rather than integrating disciplinary knowledge. Some disciplines may not need to be included from the start and not involved in the project framing or the research design. In cases like this, there are clear asymmetries of leadership within the project due to the project objectives. If your application's work packages can be easily separated into the remits of different research councils, your application may not be considered as interdisciplinary by the assessors, and it may be better to apply for funding through the individual research councils using the cross-council remit agreement. There are various definitions for transdisciplinary research, but it is often defined as research that transgresses boundaries between disciplinary knowledge or integrates different bodies of knowledge and actively co-creates knowledge between academic and societal partners, such as policymakers or business. Interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and transdisciplinary research are all valid ways of working, but applications to this scheme must be interdisciplinary. It is possible for an application to be both interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary, where it involves non-academic stakeholders. But to be in scope for this scheme, an application has to be interdisciplinary. An application that is only transdisciplinary is not in scope. As I said earlier, interdisciplinary research applications that fall within a single research council boundary are ineligible for this scheme. So I just want to go through this slide, which illustrates what is in scope for the CRCRM scheme. On the left-hand side of the slide, there are 3 graphics which illustrate interdisciplinary research with disciplines from 2 or more research councils being integrated. In the top 2 graphics, you can see there are projects with disciplines from 2 councils, councils A and B, where in one project the disciplines are of equal size, and in the other project, one discipline is much larger part of the project than the other, but there is still integration of the disciplines. The minimum proportion of a project that we would expect to see for a discipline from a second research council for this scheme would need to be 10%. Where a second discipline is less than 10%, the project would be considered to fall in a single council boundary. There is also a project that integrates disciplines from across 3 research councils and now includes Council C. And again, these are not of equal size, but you can see that there is integration of all those disciplines in the project. Now, you could have a project with disciplines from more than 3 councils, but it's my PowerPoint skills that limit demonstrating this and not the scheme itself. And just to note, it is the research that needs to cross the research council remit and not just the expertise of the researchers on the project. On the right-hand side of the slide is what is considered out of scope for this scheme. In the top graphic, the project is interdisciplinary, as the disciplines are being integrated, but the disciplines are covered by the remit of 1 research council. And in the bottom graphic, there are disciplines coming from 2 research councils, but there is no integration of the disciplines, and they can easily be separated out into separate work packages. Therefore, the project would be considered multidisciplinary. And this is best supported through the cross-council remit agreement. Now later, Jenny is going to talk through how we assess applications and how we allocate them into panels of a manageable size. She's going to talk about 5 research domains. The research domains align closely, but not directly, to the Research Council remit boundaries. And this is because we want the assessment process to be agnostic of the Research Council boundaries and not siloed by them. It is possible to cross 2 council remits, but still be within 1 research domain. And that will become clear in Jenny's part of the presentation. But note, when we talk about what is in and out of scope and crossing Research Council boundaries, applications have to cross the boundaries of the 2 research councils and not 2 research domains. So you should carefully consider whether your proposal meets the criteria for this new scheme, or if it would fit existing council-led responsive mode funding opportunities. A small proportion of applications might be suitable for both, and you must determine which scheme to make your submission to, as duplicate applications are not permitted. Now that we've gone through round 1 of the scheme, we are able to share with you some of our learnings from the process and what good interdisciplinary research looks like. We asked the panels from the outline stage to provide some generalised feedback on the common themes from assessment of applications in their panel, asking them to highlight the common strengths of the highest scoring applications and what the common weaknesses were of lower scoring applications. The full feedback is published on our scheme webpage, but I was just going to pick out some of the common mistakes that the lower scoring applications made with respect to the interdisciplinary aspects of the applications. And these were that the reciprocal benefits were not obvious or sufficiently explained, that applications did not explain how the proposal was co-created by all the disciplines involved, or didn't manage to communicate the importance of co-creating, co-designing their project and addressing the research challenges. And it was highlighted that there was often an absence of different disciplinary perspectives. In many cases, proposals were not considered to be multidisciplinary, were considered to be multidisciplinary, not interdisciplinary, either by having a tool that was being transplanted or bolted on from one discipline to another, and the tool itself was not being developed as part of the application. And this was a particular issue in many applications using artificial intelligence. Individual Research Council responsive mode schemes do support AI technologies that are being applied to the research challenges within their discipline areas. There are also applications that were considered multidisciplinary, where the disciplinary approach was siloed when addressing parts of the research, and there was no integration of disciplines or reciprocal benefits to the different disciplines. And finally, the challenges to interdisciplinary working were not addressed in the proposal. The panel chairs also provided some key advice to anyone considering submitting an outline to future rounds of the scheme, and that was, do not overcomplicate the project by unnecessarily involving disciplines from more Research Council remits. Just because the project covers more Research Council remits does not increase the quality of the interdisciplinary nature of the research. And secondly, allow sufficient time to work with colleagues to ensure all co-applicants are fully involved in the creation of the application. We've also published generalised feedback from the full stage on the scheme webpage. And one of the points at the full stage was that whilst these were only 2-year projects, it was clear how what was being done in those 2 years fitted in with a longer term vision. Again, through our evaluation, we've had some really useful feedback from the applicants when we asked them to compare their approach in developing their CRCRM scheme application to other responsive mode applications. And many of the applicants said that there were differences in how they developed their application, saying it took them more time to discuss and write the proposal because working with more people, more time was needed for everyone to contribute to writing the application compared to a project that is led by a single individual. However, applicants actually found the process a useful learning experience and was actually a really enjoyable and rewarding one. We now have some great examples from our first cohort of funded applications, and I'm just going to pick out a few. The first is a team led by Professor Guru Athal, working with 18 co-leads from across the University of Nottingham and Nottingham University Hospitals NHS Trust to develop a snake-like robot to treat bile duct cancer. The project brings together experts in medicine, endoscopy, engineering, robotics, physics, imaging, bioelectrics, and genomics to improve the accurate diagnosis and treatment of bile duct cancer. The technology will use to navigate the difficult to access narrow bile duct and capture images to inform the design of a 3D map. And they will also be developing stents loaded with nanoparticles into the bile duct to be delivered and activated using wireless electrical fields to stimulate the death of the cancer cells. Another of the funded projects is bringing together historians and marine scientists to convert historical knowledge into sustainable ocean management. And this is led by Dr. Alec Moore, along with 2 co-leads from Bangor University. And they will research historical sources from the 17th to the early 20th centuries before the crash in herring stocks to identify ecologically important herring spawning areas and understand the long-term variations in spawning activity in response to changing climates, and this is to better protect global herring resources. Another team of 4 researchers led by Dr. Madeline Busmaker from the University of Surrey is combining ultrasound and microorganisms to develop a novel hybrid technology for the treatment of persistent organic pollutants, specifically targeting synthetic chemicals used in consumer products. And they will engineer a combined sono biotechnology that will deliver the complete sustainable and efficient treatment, removing these from the environment. I also have a couple of examples using artificial intelligence, where it's not just being applied as a tool, but being developed and integrated into the research. The first is the project led by Tim Smith from the University of the Arts London, plus 4 co-leads from 3 other research organisations who are developing a tool to predict the age appropriateness of children's media. It brings together a team of researchers from children's animation practice, media theory, developmental psychology, neuroscience and artificial intelligence to build an AI tool that can predict a video clip's potential impact on children's ability to learn, understand and develop self-control. The AI tool will be used to check whether content is developmentally appropriate, aiding in the creation of higher quality content and allowing parents to make more informed decisions on content selection for their children. The second AI project is developing an AI-powered digital twin for sustainable beef farming led by Xiao Ma from Nottingham Trent University, plus 6 co-leads from across 4 research organisations, bringing together environmental, biological, computer and management scientists. The digital twin will model the whole supply chain of beef farming practices to empower decisions to improve productivity, quality, animal welfare and environmental impact. From doing the first webinar, we have realised that the example projects that I've used here are more applied and have clear societal impacts and benefits. And that is a consequence of the fact that they were highlighted by our communications team in the press release, and that tends to pick out applications with clearer societal and commercial impacts. We did fund some more blue skies projects, which are all listed on the UKRI webpage, but just to give you a couple of examples, one project is looking at the structure of marine cell walls and their adaptability to changing environments using soft matter physics, molecular engineering and cell biology. Another is redefining how we perceive and communicate data by harnessing the power of sound, exploring and monitoring data in different ways other than its visualization. And another is researching the subjective experience of remembering to provide researchers with new paradigms and tools for the study of human experience and the vividness of memory. And you can go to the UKRI website for the press release to find a full list of the projects that we've awarded. So as part of the announcement of round 1 funded applications and the launch of round 2, we have created some short videos covering the importance of supporting interdisciplinary research and also the benefits of interdisciplinary approaches to research. And we also have one for tips for writing a successful interdisciplinary research proposal that I'm going to play for you now, but we'll put the links to all 3 videos in the chat.
My one piece of advice to a speculative applicant would be to think really carefully about the disciplines that you need to be involved in this research project and involve them from the outset. What we really want to see is a sort of clear, logical case being made for why those disciplines are needed to address that research question.
If the proposal has clearly stated what the problem is and made the approach that they're going to use to solve these interdisciplinary problems clear, just the quality, the idea and the enthusiasm emerges from a well-written proposal.
It's always a slight challenge to work with people who are outside your own field because potentially you speak different language, potentially you are interested in different things. And we found it useful to be really explicit and to be honest with each other about what we know and don't know.
So another challenge that we found while co-creating this project was actually demonstrating how it was going to be truly interdisciplinary. One of the ways in which we did that was to actually split up the overall project into 3 research questions so that there was reciprocal benefit to each discipline as the project progressed.
One of the things we found incredibly useful for articulating that interdisciplinarity was diagrams. And we actually spent quite a bit of time early on when we were having discussions drawing diagrams of how our disciplines might interrelate with each other and what information was likely to flow from one to the next.
Working together is a really crucial part to deliver this project and all these interdisciplinary projects that have been funded. And at the core, it's making sure that we get all the postdoctoral researchers that are involved in it spending time in each other's labs, understanding each other's skill sets so that they can then work together to solve the fundamental problem.
Thanks to everyone involved in making of that video. Before I hand over to Hilary, I'm just going to say there are now 36 teams out there who can be advocates for this scheme, but also members of the Interdisciplinary Assessment College, the membership of which is published on our scheme webpage. And those that have been involved in round 1, and especially the chairs, will have a greater insight into the scheme, who you could reach out to for guidance and support. But I'm just going to hand over to Hilary now.
Thank you, Alex. I'm Hilary McNeil, and I will cover in the next few slides who can apply, including organisation eligibility, grant roles and applicant eligibility, and I will also touch on what you can apply for. You can apply as an individual or consortium based in a single UK institute or across several institutions. You can only be a project lead on one application. However, you may be involved in other applications to this round in a different role, providing you have the capacity to meet these commitments. We are committed to achieving equality of opportunity for all applicants, and we encourage a diverse range of researchers to apply. We support people to work in a way that suits their personal circumstances, including those who have taken career breaks, those balancing work alongside caring responsibilities, and those needing flexible working and alternative working patterns. We encourage applicants and awardees to follow the principles of the Concordat to support the career development of researchers. And we also encourage you to follow the technician commitment principles, which aim to ensure recognition and career development for technicians working in higher education and research. UKRI can offer disability and accessibility support for applicants and grant holders during the application process if you require this. I will now go through organisation eligibility and explain the need for institutional caps that we are applying to manage demand for round 2. Research grants are open to applicants from organisations that are normally eligible for funding from the UKRI research councils. Non-academic organisations such as businesses or charities are not able to apply to this scheme, but they can be included as project partners. We will check lead organisational eligibility for applications, but it is the responsibility of the lead organisation to check the eligibility of all collaborators, both UK and international, as well as the eligibility of individuals for their proposed roles, and our guidance provides the detail to enable you to do this. The lead organisation and any collaborating organisation should have agreed to provide all the necessary support for the proposed project if it is successful. As Alex mentioned, we experienced high demand for this scheme in round 1, and so to manage this for round 2, we've introduced institutional caps to the number of applications that can be submitted by each lead organisation. This is to ensure that our interdisciplinary assessment college has the capacity to assess all applications in a timely and effective manner. Caps apply to the applications being led by an organisation. They do not constrain their staff from being involved as co-leads in applications led by other organisations. The level of cap applied is based on submissions to the 2021 Research Excellence Framework, with the number of applications allowed related to the FTE staff numbers included within each organisation's REF submission. Those that did not submit to the REF are permitted a maximum of 2 submissions each to this opportunity. We are collecting data on how lead organisations select applications for submission, and so they must provide a statement describing inclusive processes they used to identify and select applications to put forward. We are holding workshops with ARMA on the 10th and the 11th of October around approaches to submitting EDI data as part of inclusive selection statements. We made the pre-announcement back in June to enable research organisations to put their internal processes in place, so some of these might already be underway. It's really important that you speak to your organisation's research office at an early stage to check what their internal processes and requirements are for determining which applications to put forward within their permitted allocation. I'll cover in the next 3 slides the various roles on project teams that are eligible, starting with project leads and UK-based project co-leads. The role types I'm going to describe are those used by the new UKRI funding service, and our guidance links you to more detail, including the equivalent role names used previously in applications made through the GES system, which you may be more familiar with. The project lead is responsible for the intellectual leadership and overall management of the project and is the main point of contact for UKRI. They must be affiliated with the lead organisation on the application. The project co-lead in the UK assists the project lead in the management and leadership of the project and may deputise as a leader if required. A project can have a number of co-leads. To be eligible for these roles, we expect applicants to have a PhD or equivalent, or at least a postgraduate qualification. Also, they must be researchers based in the UK and employed by an eligible UK organisation. And there are some exceptions to this which we outline in our guidance, such as if your project involves long periods in another country. They must also have a contract of employment at lecturer level or equivalent that extends beyond the duration of the proposed grant. This scheme is primarily supporting interdisciplinary ideas emerging from the UK research community, but we are allowing international project co-leads to be included as part of the team where they can make a significant intellectual contribution to the design and delivery of the project. They cannot be a project lead. An international project co-lead must be employed by a research organisation in an overseas country and will be a member of the leadership and management team. However, unlike UK-based co-leads, they cannot take over the leadership of the project as they do not meet the residency criteria to do so. Their international organisation must meet the equivalent eligibility requirements to receive UKRI funding. We provide further information about our international policy in our guidance, and you should refer to this if you are considering involving international project co-leads in your team. The UK research organisation, which hosts the project lead, will be responsible for undertaking due diligence and confirming that the international research organisation and project co-lead meet the eligibility criteria. There are different costing arrangements for international project co-leads, and these must be considered at an early stage to ensure their involvement is feasible. There are a number of other eligible roles for team members, and we have included these in our guidance. I'll highlight here some that are particularly relevant to this scheme. A research and innovation associate carries out research or innovation work on a project and must be employed by the lead organisation or one of the collaborating organisations. They are not eligible to be a project lead or co-lead, but they can be included in the core team as a researcher co-lead if they have made a substantial contribution to the development of the application and if they will continue to be closely involved in the project. A specialist is an individual who brings specialist skills and intellectual input to the project. For example, they might be data scientists, graphic designers, specialist technicians, librarians, or public contributors with lived experience. To be a specialist, you must be employed by the lead organisation or one of the collaborating organisations, unless you are a public contributor. Some examples of public contributors are members of the public, patients, members of voluntary groups or community groups. Please do note that doctoral students are not eligible for funding through this scheme, and funds are not available for PhD students for their training through this scheme. I've talked about eligibility of organisations, individuals and other team members. This slide covers the involvement of collaborators. So a collaborator can be a project partner or subcontractor, and they differ in the type of involvement that they have and how they can be costed. A project partner provides specific contributions to the team and project in cash or in kind and should not claim funds from the UKRI for their involvement, apart from minor directly incurred costs such as travel and subsistence. We won't request letters of support from project partners as part of the application submission, but if you are invited to submit a full stage application, we may ask for more details about your arrangements with non-academic partners. Entitlement to the outputs of a project or intellectual property will need to be determined by the parties involved, and any access to project outputs or IP must be in line with subsidy control regulation. A formal collaboration agreement will need to be drawn up to set out these arrangements, and we've provided here and in our guidance a link to a useful tool for discussions with collaborators in order to define their role, and it provides some additional guidance around subsidy control. You should speak to your organisation's department responsible for drafting and signing collaboration agreements, and you should ensure you discuss with collaborators aspects such as responsibilities, IP rights, financial contributions, and access to data, equipment, and so on. The collaboration agreement will need to be submitted to UKRI by successful awardees only. A subcontractor is a third-party individual who is not employed as staff on the grant, who is subcontracted by a participating organisation to deliver a specific piece of work for which they can receive payment. Organisations with applicants as core team members on the project cannot be included as project partners or subcontractors. We understand that some changes may need to be made between outline and full stage applications. And as Alex has explained, this opportunity is looking for teams that co-create and design their projects with the involvement of all relevant disciplines from the inception. With reasonable justification, we can allow project co-leads and collaborators to be changed or added between the outline and full application stages. But we ask that you do please contact us if you need to request this so that we can confirm your eligibility to proceed. Our policy for resubmissions is that we are allowing applications that were unsuccessful at the outline stage of round 1 to resubmit their application to round 2. And this would be subject to that application being selected for inclusion in the lead organisation's allocation. If the application was unsuccessful at the full stage of round 1, the same application cannot be submitted to round 2 unless it was invited to do so. To be considered as a completely new submission, your application will need to represent overall a substantially different package of work, such as a different idea with different aims and objectives from the original application. The information we've included in this slide is to provide an overview of costs that can be included. Costings are not required for an outline stage submission, but you will want to know what is and is not allowable, so we've set out a rough guide here. UKRI will in most cases fund costs at 80% of the full economic cost, with the lead organisation contributing the remaining 20%. There are some exceptions shown here also. More details on costs will be provided for those applicants who are successful at the outline stage and who are invited to submit a full stage application. And there is further explanation in our guidance. UKRI funds the UK lead organisation of a successful applicant. That organisation is then responsible for distributing funds to other organisations involved in the grant, including international research organisations. For international organisations, justified directly incurred costs will be funded at 100%, and estate and indirect costs are not eligible. Costs for international project co-leads cannot exceed 30% of the overall cost of the project. And further details on that is in our core guidance. We will fund up to 80% of the cost of equipment, and this is in line with our updated harmonised policy for equipment, and it differs from the funding level at round 1, where we only funded equipment at 50%. By equipment, we mean individual items costing above £10,000, including VAT, which needs to be both essential to the research and there needs to be no alternative provision available. These items should be subject to external competition via your organisation's procurement processes to ensure best value for money. Individual items of equipment below £10,000, including VAT, and consumables can be included as other directly incurred costs. We recently held a webinar to introduce UKRI supported facilities that you could request to access through this scheme. And we recommend that you watch the recording. But in brief, costs for facilities are funded at 80% FEC from the grant, and the lead research organisation is responsible for the remaining 20%. There are some exceptions that can be requested, and we ask you to email those in, and they're outlined here in this slide. But you would need to request those exceptions by the deadline for submissions. We urge you to contact the facility you wish to use well in advance of the outline stage application submission to discuss the feasibility of your project, check eligibility, obtain rough costings, and to ensure that you are aware of access procedures and timelines. You may need to apply for these directly to the facility ahead of the application deadline, but do please watch the facilities webinar and check our guidance for more details. I'm now going to hand it over to Jenny Morris, who will take you through the assessment process.
Thank you, Hilary, and hello everybody. So yes, I'm now going to explain how to apply to this two-stage application process and how your application will be assessed. So to submit an outline application, you'll need to follow the link to the funding service from the funding finder page for this opportunity. The deadline is the 19th of November at 4 p.m. UK time. Be mindful that once you have submitted your application, we cannot return it for amendment, even if this is before the deadline has passed. If you've made an error on your submission, please get in touch with the team for advice, but note that you may need to submit a new application. So please do give yourself and your research office plenty of time to approve it and to submit. There are 8 sections that you will need to complete. The first 4 sections here are not assessed, but are for you to provide application details and to help us to process your application. So firstly, you'll need to provide a summary of your proposed work, and this is up to 550 words. And this should be written for a variety of readers, and if successful, it will be made publicly available. It also helps us to identify experts to assess your application. Then in the core team section, you'll need to list the key members of your team and assign them their roles. Then, to help us determine which panel your application will be assessed by, under the classification of your proposed research section, please select up to 10 keywords of research areas from the list that has been provided. Please could you ensure that you use the precise wording and codes that we've provided in the list and separate each of those keywords using a semicolon. If you or your team have submitted a version of your application to the outline stage of round 1 of this scheme, if you could please indicate this under application history and provide the GES grant reference as well as your role on that application. So the next 3 sections are the core questions that the panel will be using to assess your application. And these are fit to opportunity, outline vision and approach, and applicant and team capability to deliver. And I'll explain these in a bit more detail in the next few slides. But before I do so, I should also mention section 8, and this is for project partners. So this is where you can tell us about your known project partners at the time of submission for the outline stage. It will ask you for a contribution value, but if you do not know that at this stage, you can input a notional value or £0. And project partners can be added between the outline and the 4 stages. I should mention that all of these sections are visible to the panel members assessing your application. So if you or a core team member needs to tell us something that you wish to remain confidential and will not be viewed by the panel, then please email the team at UKRI@ukri.org. So I'll now talk you through the 3 areas of assessment. So for each of the questions that I go through, the blue boxes contain the criteria that the panel members will be using. But I should mention there's also important guidance for what they're looking for in the information that we provide beneath. All of the assessment areas are weighted equally. So the first assessment area is fit to opportunity, and we ask that you describe the interdisciplinary nature of your proposed research. This should be a concise answer in 250 words. You should explain how your research could only be achieved through interdisciplinary research compared to a multidisciplinary approach, how the different disciplines will integrate in the research application, the potential for reciprocal research benefits for all of the disciplines involved, and how you've co-created and co-designed the project with input from all of the disciplines needed for the successful delivery of the project. You'll need to clearly demonstrate that the research involves disciplines from more than one research council and explores new types or approaches to interdisciplinary research that is not routinely funded through the existing responsive mode schemes. Work that's within a single discipline or disciplines that fall within a single research council are ineligible for the scheme. So while this question focuses you on how to explain how your work is interdisciplinary, you should address all of the ongoing assessment questions through the lens of interdisciplinarity and really embed it throughout of your application. The second assessment area is vision and approach, and where you should answer the question, what are you hoping to achieve with, and how are you delivering your proposed work? This should be submitted as a 2-page PDF attachment to the question in the funding service. For the vision part of the question, you should use approximately half a page to explain how your proposed work is of excellent quality and importance beyond the field or area, has the potential to advance current understanding, generate new knowledge, thinking or discovery beyond the fields or areas, is timely given current trends, contexts and needs, and also impacts world-leading research, society, the economy, or the environment. In particular, assessors will be looking for work of an excellent quality and importance beyond established disciplinary thinking, and how these approaches will advance current understanding, and how the proposed work has the potential to deliver outcomes that could only be achieved through this interdisciplinary research and approach. For the approach part of this question, you should use approximately 1.5 pages to explain how you're going to design your work so that it is effective and appropriate to achieve your objectives. So in this part, assessors will be looking for you to clearly articulate how you will address the challenges that the integration of the disciplines could face, and clearly articulate the method you'll be using, particularly where new methods are being developed or where existing methodologies will be integrated. So the third and final assessment area is application team and capability to deliver. And you should answer the question, how will the application team deliver the proposed research programme? And this should be a short answer up to 250 words that outlines the relevant experience and skills in the team as a whole to develop and deliver the proposed research programme. You should also consider if the team represents the right mix of skills and perspectives to approach the proposed work. This section does not require information on publication records, positions held, or any other elements of a traditional track record. So to remind you, all of these questions and criteria are available on the funding finder page for this opportunity and in the guidance that we've provided. So once your application has been submitted, we'll then use the summary and the keywords that you provided to assign your application to an appropriate interdisciplinary cluster. And these clusters reflect the interfaces between the 5 key research domains listed below. As Alex mentioned, these domains and clusters are for our internal use to provide a flexible framework to form panels. You do not need to fit your application into one of these clusters. The eligibility for the scheme is based on the proposed work crossing the boundaries of the council's remits. As long as your work meets the eligibility for this, you should feel free to submit the project that you want to, and we will ensure that the right experts assess your application. And we have scope to create additional panels to accommodate different combinations than listed here if required. And the number of panels and their makeup will depend on the breadth of the projects that are submitted to the round. Roving panel members will observe a number of panels each to ensure consistency of the assessment process between the panels. Your application will then be assessed using the following process. So firstly, UKRI will check your application has met the requirements of the submission and crosses the remit boundaries of at least 2 councils. And we get help from the council subject matter experts in this, and any applications that do not meet this criteria can be rejected at this stage. Once these checks are completed, 3 members of the Interdisciplinary Assessment College will review your application and will submit scores independently from one another. Where applications are consistently low scoring, through consultation with the panel chairs, they will be sifted out ahead of the panel meeting, where only those with the potential to proceed to the full stage will be discussed. The panels will prioritise applications they recommend for inviting through to the full stage via a banding process. Once all of the panels have met, the chairs and the rovers from each panel meet to moderate or tension the bands across the panels before UKRI select and invite forward applications to the full stage. The process for the full stage is similar to the outline, but includes a project lead response step. So panel members will collectively provide feedback on your application, including clarifying questions which you will need to respond to and is taken into consideration alongside your application at the full stage panel meetings. And at these full stage meetings, all applications are discussed. Again, once the panels have banded the applications and the panels have been moderated via the tensioning process, UKRI will then allocate the funding. So to clarify, there are 3 decision-making steps towards selecting successful applications, both at the outline and the full stage. So after each panel has scored the applications, they come to a consensus on the appropriate prioritisation of applications to recommend via a banding process. Applications that can be considered of equal quality are banded together between bands A through to D. At the full stage panels, Panels can also allocate up to 10% of applications to an A-star band, and that guarantees funding to outstanding applications of the highest quality. After the banding process, the chairs and the rovers attend a tensioning meeting to report back on the outcomes. Roving members who observed a number of panels report back on the consistency of how the assessment and the banding processes were applied for safeguarding and to ensure fair assessment of across all of the panels. After the tensioning meeting, the project board for the scheme consider and approve the bandings. On advice from the chairs and the rovers, they may, by exception, move band boundaries to moderate the scoring between panels. At the outline stage, the top banded applications are invited forward to the full stage up to the maximum number that we can take through. And this number will be based on ensuring a reasonable award rate of at least 20% at the full stage. At the full stage, A-star banded applications are guaranteed funding, and any subsequent bands are then funded until the budget is spent. Where the number of applications within a band exceeds the number of applications that we can either invite forward at the outline stage or fund at the full stage, a randomization process is applied to all of the applications in the band to provide a ranked list. So, for example, in round 1, we were able to invite forward all band A applications from the outline to full stage. However, if in round 2, the number of banded applications for band A exceeds the number that we take through, a randomization will be applied across that band A of applications that have been deemed of equal quality by the panels and the chairs. So we will let you know the outcome of your outline application by the 3rd of April 2025. If successful, you'll receive further instructions on how to apply to the full stage by the 4th of April, when the opportunity will open in the funding service. We will also run a technical webinar to support you to complete your full application. So what to expect in terms of the questions? Well, the core assessment questions are similar to those at the outline, but with more space to build on information you've already provided and with additional sections on ethics and responsible research innovation and for the resource and cost justifications. Please note that for the applicant and team capability to deliver section at the full stage, we will be using the Resume for Researcher and Innovation Narrative CV template. And we would like to highlight to you a new exchange platform that for narrative style CVs or PEP CV. And this is a resource for the R&I community to engage via peer exchanges, how best to present the range of experiences, achievements and career pathways in all types of narrative style CVs. In the next section, I'll just finally highlight the key dates for round 2 and the resources that are available to you. So as you know, round 2 has now opened with a closing date of 19th November. The outline stage panel meetings will be between the 10th and the 14th of March 2025, and the outcomes should be communicated to applicants during that first week of April, with the full stage opening on the 4th of April. Please also make a note in your diaries of the key dates here for the full stage, including the closing date of the 3rd of July 2025 and the project lead responses between the 22nd of September and the 6th of October. Successful full stage applications will be announced by the end of November 2025. There is a lot of supporting information and documents available for the scheme and opportunity, which we have linked to here, including a dedicated scheme webpage, guidance documents, and generalised feedback from round 1 from the college, as well as a video on interdisciplinary research. We also held a webinar in early July about the UKRI supported facilities available to you, and you can watch the recording of this and a copy of the slides presented by following these links. We have also provided here some wider resources and references that you may find useful, in particular the SHAPE ID toolkit, which includes reflection questions to consider and top tips for writing interdisciplinary research proposals. So in terms of where else to get help, we advise in the first instance you refer to the opportunity information on the website and the guidance to applicants that we've provided. Due to a high demand for this scheme, we do not have capacity to check your application fits the opportunity or the remits before submission, but you can get further details about the council's remits from their website following this link that we've provided here. You should also be in touch with your research office for support on writing your application and costings, as well as any internal selection processes that you need to submit to. As Hilary mentioned, we were also running some jointly running workshops with ARMA between the 10th and the 11th of October, and you can find more information about these following the link provided. If you do still have specific opportunity questions, you can contact the team using UKRI/RM at ukri.org. For technical support for using the funding service, you should contact the funding service help desk using the email here or the phone number provided. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. So on behalf of all the speakers, thank you very much for listening.